Hi there, and welcome to Tom's podcast. I'm truly glad you're here, whether this is your first time tuning in or you've been walking this path with us for a while now. This space was created for people like you, people who are questioning, reflecting, and searching for something more meaning, more direction, more life in their life. Have you ever really paused to ask yourself, how much of my life is truly mine? Not just the hours you spend working, eating, or resting, but the dreams you're chasing, the path you're on. Was it chosen or simply inherited? Today, we're going to explore a theme that's quietly shaping millions of lives across the world, often without them realizing it. It's the idea of designing a meaningful life, as opposed to following the well-worn trail of the default life path. You know the one. Finish school, get a job, get married, buy a house, raise kids, retire. A path laid out so cleanly that most of us never stop to ask, is this really what I want? Here at Tom's podcast, our mission is simple: to spark those questions and to help you reclaim ownership over your choices. Each episode is a small nudge, a gentle reminder that you don't have to live by someone else's script. You have the power and the right to shape your own story. We release new episodes every Sunday evening, just in time to give your week a fresh perspective. So whether you're commuting, relaxing, or out for a walk, we hope these conversations become part of your weekly rhythm, something that helps you pause, reflect, and realign with what truly matters to you. And if what we talk about here resonates with you, I'd love for you to stay connected. Subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening right now, and join our growing community of curious minds and intentional dreamers. In today's episode, we'll be diving into a simple but powerful framework: life as a timeline. A visual, tangible way to see where your time goes, and more importantly, where your choices lie. We'll look at how much time we really have to shape our lives, how easy it is to fall into the default path, and how we can begin to design something more intentional, more fulfilling, more uniquely you. So once again, welcome. Let's take a deep breath together. Set aside distractions and open the door to possibility. Because today, we're not just talking about life, we're talking about your life and how you can choose to live it on purpose. Let's take a step back for a moment and imagine your life stretched out on a single line, from the moment you're born to the moment you take your final breath. Think of it as an 80-year timeline. In Vietnam and many places around the world, 75 to 80 years is considered the average lifespan. It might seem like a long time when you're young, but when you start breaking it down, something surprising and maybe a little sobering happens. The first part of this timeline, from birth to around age 18, is what we could call the programmed years. These are the years where most of your choices are made for you. You go to school because that's the law. You follow a routine created by your parents, your teachers, and the society around you. There's structure, protection, and guidance, but not much freedom. You're in a system designed to prepare you for the world, but rarely does it ask you what kind of life you want to live. On the other end of the spectrum, after age 70, we enter another phase that's often shaped by limitations. These are the years when health tends to decline, energy decreases, and the body slows down. Of course, there are exceptions. Plenty of people live vibrant lives well into their 80s or 90s. But realistically, it's a phase where possibilities begin to narrow. Many of us will need to shift our focus to maintenance, rest, and reflection. It's not a time for starting everything from scratch. So if you take those two segments, the first 18 years and the final 10 or so, and subtract them from your life's timeline, you're left with a number that might surprise you. About 52 years. 52 years where you're healthy enough, old enough, and free enough to shape the direction of your life. 52 years where your choices matter the most. Think about that. What if you only had 52 years to truly shape your life? How would you spend them? These 52 years, roughly from age 18 to 70, are what I like to call the prime years. Not because they're perfect or easy, but because they're yours. Yours to define, yours to build, yours to redirect. In these years, you're no longer being told what to do every day. And hopefully, you're not yet too limited by health or circumstance to take bold steps. Yet even during these prime years, many of us fall into routines and expectations that were never really ours to begin with. We wake up one day and realize we're following someone else's blueprint, working jobs we didn't choose, living in places we didn't love, chasing goals we never questioned. Why? Because we never stepped back to look at the timeline. We never asked ourselves where we actually had control. Now, I'm not saying the first or last parts of life aren't meaningful. They are. Childhood is full of wonder, learning, and emotional imprinting. The later years can be rich with wisdom, reflection, and even new beginnings. But when it comes to agency, the power to choose, those 52 middle years are our golden window. And here's the thing, they fly by faster than you think. In your 20s, it feels like there's endless time to figure things out. By your 30s, you start juggling responsibilities, career, relationships, maybe a family. In your 40s, routines harden, comfort zones deepen, and change starts to feel riskier. And by your 50s and 60s, many people begin to look back and ask, did I live the way I wanted? Or did I just go along for the ride? That's why awareness is so important. You see your life as a timeline. You can start making more conscious choices about how you spend your time, your energy, your focus. You start asking better questions. Is this job aligned with my values? Are these relationships helping me grow? Am I living in a way that feels honest to who I am? It's not about rushing or feeling pressure to have it all figured out. It's about recognizing the window of opportunity you have right now to shape your story. Whether you're 18 or 38 or 58, it's never too early or too late to start asking, what do I want my timeline to look like? Because time moves forward whether we're intentional or not. The question is, do we want to drift or do we want to steer? Let's break down this timeline even more in the next segment and look at where we tend to fall into default choices and how we can start reclaiming our direction. Have you ever felt like you're living out a story that someone else wrote for you? Like your life is following a preset script and you're just playing the part without ever auditioning for the role? That feeling isn't uncommon. In fact, it's something most of us experience at some point, sometimes without even realizing it. Let's talk about what many call the default life path. It goes something like this. You finish high school, go to university, pick a safe career, maybe something your parents or teachers suggested. Then you get a job, work your way up, find a partner, get married, have kids, buy a house, raise a family, and eventually retire. It's a path so familiar, so widely accepted, that questioning it can almost feel rebellious. But where did this script come from? Why does it feel like the right way to live? For many of us, it starts early. From childhood, we're surrounded by subtle and not so subtle expectations. Parents, with good intentions, often push us toward stability. Schools prepare us to be good employees, not necessarily free thinkers. Society celebrates certain milestones, graduation, promotions, weddings, babies, as signs of success. And so, without much space or encouragement to pause and reflect, we step onto the track and start running. It's not that this path is inherently wrong. For some, it brings genuine joy and purpose. But the danger lies in following it without intention, without ever asking, is this what I really want? Because when we don't ask, we risk living a life that fits someone else's mold rather than our own. Let me share a story that illustrates this. There was a guy I knew, let's call him Min. Min was always good at computers. In high school, his teachers praised him for his problem-solving skills. His parents were proud and encouraged him to pursue IT. It's a stable job, they said. You'll never go hungry. So he enrolled in a computer science program at university, landed an internship by his third year, and by the time he graduated, he had a full-time job at a reputable tech firm. But something didn't feel right. Every day, Min sat in front of screens, writing code, debugging systems, joining meetings that left him drained. He did it well, really well, but he wasn't happy. His days felt colorless, mechanical, and yet he couldn't complain. After all, he was doing everything right. It wasn't until a business trip took him to Singapore, where he dined at a tiny local restaurant, that something shifted. He met the chef, who talked about cooking with such passion that it lit something inside Min. As a child, Min had loved to cook with his grandmother. He had forgotten that joy. That night, for the first time in years, he remembered what it felt like to be fully alive. Fast forward 2 years, Min left his job. He took a culinary course, started a small food blog, and began hosting pop-up dinners. Today, he runs a successful home kitchen that blends Vietnamese and modern cuisine. He works longer hours than before, but he says he feels more alive now than he ever did writing code. Now, Min's story doesn't mean everyone should quit their jobs and become chefs. The point is, he realized he was living someone else's story. And once he saw that, he had the courage to rewrite it. The truth is, the default path is popular because it offers predictability. It checks boxes. It makes sense on paper, but it often doesn't leave room for the wild, the unexpected, the deeply personal. It doesn't always ask what makes you come alive, and when we follow it blindly, the cost can be high. We end up waking up at 30, 40, or 50 and feeling restless, unfulfilled. Not because our lives are empty, but because they're disconnected from who we really are. We miss out on discovering our unique passions. We settle for good enough instead of chasing what might be extraordinary. So ask yourself, am I choosing this path or just going along with it? Whose dream am I living? These are not easy questions. They challenge years of conditioning. They may bring discomfort or even fear. But they are necessary if we want to live with clarity and intention. It's okay if your path does look like the default, if you chose it consciously and it brings you joy. But if you're living on autopilot, if you're checking boxes without feeling present in your own story, maybe it's time to stop and reflect. You get to decide what your life looks like. And that power, that freedom, starts with awareness. Now, let's contrast this default path with something a little more daring. What it means to live intentionally, to build a life by design, not by default. Let's talk about what that looks like and how you can begin shaping a path that truly reflects you. Imagine, for a moment, that your life is a giant playground. And on this playground, there are all kinds of games you could play. Some are big and complex, like building a career, raising a family, starting a business, or creating art. Others are smaller but no less meaningful, like learning to dance, hiking every weekend, reading poetry, or nurturing a close friendship. The beauty of this metaphor is that it reminds us, life isn't a single path with a fixed destination. It's a vast open space full of possibilities. And you get to choose which games you want to play. Too often, we're told life is a race or a ladder, something to climb, something to win. But what if it's more like a series of experiments? What if instead of asking, what should I be doing with my life, we started asking, what do I want to experience? What brings me energy? What helps me grow? To play well on this playground, you have to make choices. And one of the biggest things we all have to work with is time. Let's break that down. You get 24 hours each day, same as everyone else. Now, on average, you'll spend about 30% of that time sleeping. That's roughly 8 hours. Another 10% goes into eating, cooking, and cleaning. Let's say 2.5 hours. Then there's commuting, errands, getting ready, random tasks that might take up another 5%, around an hour and a bit. When you do the math, you're left with just over 55% of your day, about 13 hours for everything else. That everything else is your playground. That's where your agency lies. And it's where the real designing begins. So how do people use that time? Some throw themselves into careers that light them up. Others spend more of it building families, caring for loved ones, or diving into creative pursuits. There's no single right answer. But the key is that these choices are made intentionally, not automatically. Let me give you a few examples. There's Sarah, a graphic designer who once worked at a large agency. The job paid well, the clients were prestigious, and her parents were proud. But deep down, she felt numb. What she really loved was illustrating children's books, drawing silly characters, telling magical stories. It seemed impractical, maybe even naive. But one day, she asked herself, what if I gave it a real shot? She saved up, left her job, and started freelancing part-time while building her portfolio. 2 years later, she published her first book. Today, she's not only making a living, but she wakes up excited. She chose her game. Or take Doi, a 34-year-old engineer in Ho Chi Minh City. He made a decision that shocked his family. He chose to stay single. He had no desire to marry or follow the traditional path. Instead, he spent his time traveling, mentoring students, and diving deep into philosophy and personal growth. His life didn't fit the mold, but it fit him. He chose time over tradition and purpose over pressure. There's also Lean, who decided to slow down after years of corporate stress. She scaled back her hours, moved to a smaller town, and now spends her mornings gardening and her afternoons volunteering at a local school. She's not chasing titles, she's chasing meaning. That's her game. What these stories have in common isn't what the people chose, it's that they chose. They took time to ask themselves, what matters to me? What brings me alive? What do I want my days to feel like? And that's the invitation for you too. You don't have to do what everyone else is doing. You don't have to chase things that look good but feel empty. You don't have to climb a ladder you didn't build. Instead, you can step back and design a life that feels aligned with your values, your rhythms, your curiosities. So what are your values? What are the non-negotiables, the things you care about so deeply that you'd shape your life around them? Is it freedom, creativity, connection, adventure, stability, growth? And what are your passions? Not just your hobbies, but the things that make you lose track of time. The things that make your heart race, your mind light up. The things that, even when hard, still feel worth it. You don't have to have all the answers today, but asking the questions puts you in the driver's seat. It gives you permission to try new things, to say no to what doesn't fit, to say yes to what calls you. The truth is, life will always involve trade-offs. You can't do everything. You will have to let some things go in order to focus on what really matters. But that's not a burden. That's the design process. That's you choosing the games that matter most on your playground. So I'll ask you again, what games do you want to play in your life's playground? What makes you feel awake? What would you regret not trying? You don't need a 5-year plan. You just need enough clarity to take one step, then another, and trust that the path will reveal itself as you walk it. To make these kinds of choices, though, we have to face something deeper, the fears, the doubts, and the invisible walls that hold us back. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. Let's talk about the barriers that stand between you and the life you want, and how to move through them with courage. So far, we've talked about designing your own life and choosing the games you want to play. But let's be honest, wanting to live intentionally and actually doing it are two very different things. There's often a gap between the life we imagine and the one we live, and that gap is usually filled with barriers. What's holding you back from designing the life you want? For many people, the first answer is fear. Fear of change, fear of failure, fear of judgment, even fear of success. Change, no matter how positive it may be, comes with uncertainty. And our brains are wired to avoid risk, even when staying where we are is slowly draining us. We tell ourselves, I'll make that move when I'm ready. But the truth is, most people never feel fully ready. At some point, you just have to take the leap. Then there's financial pressure. The reality is, money matters. Bills need to be paid, families need to be supported, and security is a real concern. For many, the dream of switching careers, starting something new, or taking time off feels like a luxury they can't afford. And that's valid. But sometimes, it's not about making a massive leap. It's about making small shifts over time. Maybe you don't quit your job today, but you carve out 2 hours a week to build something new. Maybe you don't move cities, but you change your daily routine to include things that energize you. Intention doesn't have to be all or nothing. Another powerful barrier is societal judgment. What will people think if I choose a different path? If I leave a stable job? If I don't get married? If I say no to what's expected? We live in a world that often rewards conformity. Choosing a different life can feel like stepping outside the circle. But here's the truth. The people who truly matter will support your growth. And those who judge you, they're often projecting their own fears. And then, perhaps the sneakiest barrier of all, inertia, the weight of routine. The comfort of the known. We wake up, do the same things, follow the same patterns, and suddenly, years have passed. Not because we chose them, but because we didn't choose anything different. It's like being stuck in a slow-moving current, drifting without realizing it. Until one day, you look around and wonder, how did I get here? But here's the good news. You don't have to stay stuck. There are ways to move forward, one step at a time. The first is self-reflection. Make space to ask yourself hard questions. What do I value? What brings me energy? What drains me? Journaling, long walks, meditation, or simply quiet mornings with a cup of tea, these small practices can help you reconnect with yourself. Because clarity begins within. The second is experimentation. You don't have to overhaul your life to try something new. Start small. Take a weekend workshop. Volunteer. Pick up a hobby you've shelved. Start that blog. Explore a new career path through freelance work or part-time study. Think of it as prototyping your life, trying ideas on for size before fully committing. Next, find mentors, people who are already living a version of the life you want. Reach out, ask questions, learn from their journey. Sometimes, just hearing someone else's story can unlock something inside you. You realize, oh, it's possible. You see a new way forward. And finally, give yourself permission to fail. Trial and error is not a detour. It is the path. Some things you try won't work out. Some people won't understand. Some seasons will be confusing. But every mistake, every pivot, every detour is bringing you closer to a life that feels like home. And let me say this clearly. It's never too late. I've seen people switch careers at 50, find love at 60, move countries at 70, start painting at 80. The timeline is yours to shape. As long as you're breathing, you're becoming. So, what's one small step you could take this week? What's one conversation, one change, one decision that would move you just a little closer to the life you want? You don't need to know the whole path. You just need the courage to take the next step. Let's wrap up with how to start putting these ideas into action, right now, right where you are. As we come to the end of today's episode, I want to take a moment to circle back to the heart of everything we've explored. Life is finite. It doesn't go on forever. And between the boundaries of childhood and old age lies a precious stretch of time, your prime years, from roughly 18 to 70. These are the years where you have the most freedom to choose, to change, to build, and to become. These years are your canvas. What you paint on it is up to you. Maybe today's conversation stirred something in you. Maybe you started thinking about your current path, your job, your relationships, your routines, and wondering, is this really what I want? If so, that's a beautiful beginning. Awareness is the first step toward design. It's the moment you stop drifting and start steering. I'd like to challenge you to do something simple but powerful. Make one intentional change this week. Just one. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It could be saying no to something that drains you, or saying yes to something you've always wanted to try. It could be scheduling 30 minutes to reflect on your values, reaching out to someone who inspires you, trying that thing you've been afraid to try. These small steps are where transformation begins. Let me share a story with you, something personal. A few years ago, I was stuck. On paper, my life looked fine. I had stability, routine, recognition. But inside, I felt disconnected from myself, from my purpose, from my sense of direction. I kept pushing through, thinking that maybe it was just a phase that it would pass, but it didn't. So I made a decision that, at the time, felt risky. I left a job I was good at, turned down a promotion, and gave myself a year to explore what truly mattered to me. I didn't have a perfect plan. I just had questions and a deep desire to stop living on autopilot. That year was messy, scary, but also the most alive I had felt in a long time. I read, traveled, met people who inspired me, and slowly started building the foundation of what is now this podcast. Looking back, that decision wasn't about quitting something. It was about choosing myself, choosing clarity over comfort, meaning over momentum. And if I could do it without certainty, without guarantees, you can too. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to be part of this community. Subscribe to Tom's podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're tuning in from. Leave a review, share your thoughts, or join the discussion on social media. Tell me, what's one small step you're taking this week to design your life? I'd genuinely love to hear from you. Because this isn't just a podcast, it's a conversation, a movement, a place for people who are tired of the default and ready to live with intention. So I'll leave you with this thought. Live so that at the end of your days, you can smile and say you had a great ride. That you didn't just exist, you experienced. That you didn't just follow, you led. That your life, in all its twists and turns, was yours. Fully courageously, beautifully yours. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for your time, your energy, and your willingness to reflect. Let's keep designing lives that make us smile. See you next Sunday.